Watch the ride.
Hey everybody, will you join me at Haslemere Motorcycles again? I'm going to take out the V-strom 250. I've done a review of the 650 and the 1000 as a head-to-head. I'm not sure if you were picking between those two you might consider this one. I don't know, it's up to you. But I thought, let's take it out and see what it's like. We'll take a proper look over the bike later on, but for now, I just want to get on the road, get going, and see what it's like. Well, easy to get on. I will mention straight away, as I always do, I am 6'4". I am not a little chap. Wow, this does not feel like I thought it was going to feel. That was quite surprising. It feels very agile. Okay, well the very first thing I always talk about is comfort, because that's the first thing that you notice. My butt is up against the pillion seat rise, and my knees are very comfortably within these fairings, and on the inside of the tank. It's very comfortable. Perfectly upright for me. The mirrors are very close to my face, which is a bit weird. They're just there, but because of the size of them and the closeness, you really can see an awful lot. Oh, well, here we go. Very, very, very smooth, like very, very smooth. In fact, I think this is smoother than the 250 that the other 250s I've tried with the same engine. Okay, I'm going to try and address the sort of elephant in the room, which is a question which I saw a lot of people asking about this bike, and I did kind of think myself, which was, okay, so it looks like an adventure bike, but it's a 250. Why? Doesn't that seem too small? And, well, the answer is no, actually, because if you want a bigger CC adventure bike, well then you can just go for the 650. But the 250 does have its benefits and is very capable. A guy called Bob from the Iron Butts UK group, basically people who do a lot of long rides and help raise money for charity. Well, I'm just amazed, well, third gear and it's getting up here without me revving too much. They recently did a ride where they basically retraced the Dam Busters route up the country, down the country and across to Germany and back. It was 850 miles in 24 hours and he ended up doing about 1400 on a V-strom 250 and he absolutely loved it. Oh, this is the tight corner, this will be an interesting one. Wow! If you're looking at doing really, really, really long distance and you really want to get from A to B, I can understand why you might want a larger CC machine. But equally, on those sorts of bikes, in my opinion, you're very much about getting to the place. So, you can be going faster, you can be getting to point B. On something a bit smaller like this, I don't know how, I'm going to test it on the motorway, I don't know how well it's going to do on the motorway. I imagine that this is going to be more like your B-road adventure bike rather than your A-road adventure bike. Just because of the cruising speeds it'll be capable and happy of doing. But in going slower, you get to see more of the scenery. The other place where I think this bike is going to do very well is in the commuter market because it's very upright, it's very comfortable, but as I'll show you when we look over the bike, this thing is just covered in tie-down points and places to attach stuff. And as a person who only owns bikes, having a bike that you can attach things to when you need to take something a little bit bigger, I totally get it. So for a utilitarian style commuting small economical bike, having ridden this for 5 minutes, I think I totally get it. Right, let's give it some beans. Well, it picks up okay. Yeah, it's not ragingly fast, but then it is only a 250. I don't think I've ever been up that one. Should we go up that one? I don't know where it goes, but I'm going to try it. You come into these things with some expectations of what you think a bike's going to be like to ride. And the one thing I wasn't really expecting was for it to handle quite so responsively and nicely. But then it makes sense, because like the other V-stroms, they do have nice handling, but they have, I assume they have more weight. This feels more weight, sorry, the 650 to me seemed more weighty than this. But very often I think that's the case, and they end up being almost the same weight, and it's more mental than anything. And the geometry of the front end is set up in just the sweet spot. It's like, it's happy neutral, but it just takes a very slight input for it to start moving around underneath you. It just feels quite confidence inspiring. Yeah, I can't say for this sort of road that I'm missing having, say for instance, a 650 or anything particularly bigger. It's cruising happily and smoothly. I mean, 6th admittedly, but it seems to have plenty of torque. I mean, let's slow it down to where it's still riding happy. Yeah, there we go. 30 in 6th, 35 in 6th, still happy, not chugging. And it's picking up, no problem. There's no bogging there. I mean, I think the fuel injection is taking care of that. But it does mean, or it seems, like if you're doing some longer distances on this, you don't have to keep changing gear. You can stick to maybe 5th or 6th and just cruise around like that. I have a BMW 1200 behind me. Oh, go on, mate. Don't kick me on the mud though. Come on then. No, they didn't get away from me, even though they have 5 times the CC. We have a loose wing mirror situation. Obviously hasn't been tightened down. This is quite a new demo. In fact, it's only got 72 miles on it, and I've got a few of those on myself. Okay, well I'm doing 60. The engine is about 7,000 RPM in 6th gear. Okay, so at 60 miles an hour, it's revving a little bit higher than maybe you'd want it to, but it doesn't feel like it's revving the balls off of it. The ride is kind of firm, but it does soften out the big bumps quite nicely. I have bad knees and a bad back, and a mirror that doesn't want to stay at the moment. Okay, so 30 to 60. I really like this. I mean, like, as a standout compared to a lot of other bikes that I've ridden, because of the comfort, because of the sort of all the convenient features of it as a utilitarian bike, and yet it's really comfy and nice to sort of just ride around. Okay, we need to bring the speed down. Let's see what the brakes are like. Obviously, this has ABS. It needs it for Euro 4, but that was it weren't like ripping my face off, but perfectly strong enough to slow you down. Got a bit of a vibration going on somewhere. It's just a piece of bodywork that's actually missing a clip. That's why that's vibrating. So that's like a duck. Now the V-strom is a sort of bike that you would get if you were regularly going to be taking a pillion. And I would like to be able to try that, but unfortunately I don't have anyone to sit on the back. I'm sure the 250 will have enough to keep you going, but it might make it a little bit more sluggish. I'd like to just see what that's like, but unfortunately that's not something I can test in this, although I am a big chap. So if you were two skinny whippersnappers, well, I'm basically equivalent of you two. Although you would have to weigh about 8 stone each. Okay, so the controls. It is all very simple. Horn, indicator left and right, cancel, hazard switch, high beam, low beam, pass light, completely standard, startup, kill switch, and then you've just got your display with your revs across the top, speed, time, fuel gauge, just the really basic fare that you expect. Got your warning lights on the side, and these flash up for, you know, left turn, left and right, and your high beam thing. One little accessory that is on this, which is good, is here we have a 12 volts cigarette style, lighter style port. So if you have a sat nav or something, you can just plug that into that temporarily. I wouldn't run a permanent GPS up from that. I'd get it wired into the bike myself. But okay, overall looks, the front end of adventure bikes always tends to be a bit sort of weird, but I actually really quite like that. It's not as extreme and insecty looking as a lot of the other ones. It's more subtle. It actually reminds me of one of the much older, was it one of the much older BMWs? It reminds me of that front sort of all-in-one piece guard, and but then you have still got your mud guards, your hugging ones to blimey, to keep the mud flicking up from you from all the tractors. On the rear, yeah, a huge mudguard, tail tidy, all in one thing. Removing it, would it improve the look of the bike? Probably a bit, but then again, if it was my bike, I probably wouldn't change any of that, because it's all there for a purpose. As I was mentioning about tie-down points, look, you've got these tie-down points, you've got these grab handles. Obviously there is a place to stick a top box on from standard, so we've got the holes in place. More tie-down points on this side. There is just, this entire space is available for attaching stuff, and nice and easily too. I mean, imagine you had a big backpack, you're on a camping trip, you could just shove it on there, a couple of ratchet straps or something like that, and it would just be solid, nice and low down. And it's got a 17-inch front. What's the rear? Oh, it's a 17-17. So that's part of the reason that it feels very manoeuvrable. I mean, if you forget the extra things, this is kind of almost supermoto-like, you know, slightly more suspension travel. It's not a huge amount, but it's a bit more. It's got a very large sprocket, which would explain its pep, but that does make me concerned that when we get to the motorway, it's going to maybe have some problems with the higher speeds, cruising speeds, but we'll find that out. It does look like someone's dropped this at some point, and well, that piece of plastic is what's taken the brunt of it, and it looks like it's quite small and replaceable, so that would be good. If you do drop it, it shouldn't be too expensive to replace small parts of fairing. Yes, it's the classic 250 engine, which Suzuki's shoving in all their 250s at the moment. I actually think it suits this role far better than it suits being in the GSX-R 125. Something about it just suits this better. The exhaust is very large, as Suzuki like to do. It is also very, very quiet. But then again, if you're a commuter, this is something from having a loud bike and sometimes having to get up early to go to work. Having a very loud bike does make you feel a little bit of an idiot when your next door neighbours are like, it's 7 o'clock in the morning and you start your bike up and it's like, Considering this is an adventure style bike, that's quite a nice feature. The throttle cable is completely accessible right on the side here. So if you know, your cable snaps while you're out on the road, that's not going to be that difficult to fix. You know, if you're out in the middle of nowhere. How about the clutch side? Again, clutch is all very accessible. I like that. I like that quite a lot. Oh, it is right there. Oh, that was intuitive. Seat pops off with one key. Big squidgy seat. Very comfortable seat. I mean, there's inches in. There's like 3 or 4 inches of foam in that at least. Very comfy. I like it. Access to the top of the shock here, and as you can see, there's an adjuster ring. So that's going to make that very adjustable. Battery, fuses, very accessible. Toolkit. More fuses. Okay, there's no storage under the seat, but then you wouldn't necessarily expect that for a bike that you're going to attach storage to. But I am absolutely loving how simple all this stuff is to get to. Like if I was going touring, and I might have to fix it on the road, to know that my clutch cable is all accessible, my throttle cables are all accessible, my suspension setup, batteries, fuses, toolkit, all of that is just literally instantly available without doing anything, or one key turn away. That's really good. I keep looking at this and thinking, do you know what, this could be a really good bike for me. But I would, because if it was my only bike, would think, yeah, but I need more grunt, I need more power for when I want to go the long distance stuff, because as I say, I don't know how this is going to be on the motorway. I also like, I like something with a bit of grunt. But as a bike to functionally do things, this thing is outstanding. I'm not joking. I know I'm really bigging up this bike, but it's just because I didn't realise how good it actually was. Just moving up here to take some pictures and some video. Let's find out how heavy it is. Not many people do this in videos, do they? Yeah, no problem. You drop that, you can pick it up. You've got, and I'm doing that the wrong way, you've got tons of grab places. Build quality is the standard Suzuki levers. Nothing massively special, but perfectly adequate, is what I always say about them. Actually, although these look like they actually have a nicer finish on them than some of the other ones. I'm sure they're just completely standard. Nice, strong looking brake lever. Pegs look good. Passenger pegs, not rubberized or anything. I mean, I'm going to look at this from some different angles, because don't forget, it is a sports adventure tourer. I don't believe that sports really belongs there on a 250. The adventure tourer, yeah, I can get that. As I've mentioned previously, it's got reasonable travel and suspension, but it's not huge, and I can't really see exactly how much travel is on the rear. It's all very hidden in there, which in ways is good, because it means you don't get so much crap building up on your shock, but in other ways it's not so good. But I have noticed there's this one thing that I personally would not have done on an adventure bike, and it's to do with the ground clearance. Running that exhaust under the bike massively reduces the amount of ground clearance you have, because look, I mean, that catalytic, I think that's a cat, or it's an expansion chamber, you're losing a good 3 inches there. Yes, it does have a skid plate, but sadly, this skid plate only protects from the front, because it actually ends here, and the exhaust actually hangs about ½ an inch lower than the skid plate. So if you actually tried to take this off-road and, for instance, get it into a rut, rather than rubbing on your skid plate, which you can pivot the bike on happily, you're actually leaning on your headers, and they're pretty thin. So ground clearance is not great on this, to be fair. What have we got, like 8 inches at most, and then behind that there's a step down where the exhaust is. On an adventure style bike that you're going to be taking off-road, no. Light dusty tracks, stuff like that, absolutely fine. Anything with bumps more than about this, there's only so long before you're going to smack into your headers. So if there was a criticism I can have on this bike, that would probably be it. The side stand is a pressed tube, and the only thing I would say about that is I would rather it had a bigger foot, because if they know people are going to take this on mud, it's going to help it being a little wider, but not massively so. It has got a whacking great headlight on it, but it actually fits in really nicely considering the size of it. Yeah, it fits in well. The screen, is this adjustable? Yeah, it's screwed on here, so that's not adjustable. You'd have to get a bigger screen if you wanted some more wind protection. I can't say that I've noticed a huge amount of wind on it, but then you're not going that fast, so we'll see on the motorway more with that, but that's definitely not doing much for me at my height. As far as adventure bikes go, they normally have quite a lot of gadgets and stuff on them, and this has pretty much got a 12 volt supply. I can't see anything else that any other 125 even would have necessarily. But is that a good thing? I mean, maybe this would have been good if they'd fitted it as standard with heated grips, but from what I understand, adding heated grips on from manufacturer ends up costing you an awful lot more money than putting them on yourself, if you buy third-party ones. So them leaving them off, I think that's probably excusable. I know how bumpy these roads are. I've ridden these roads on many, many different bikes, and this is unbelievably smooth. It's just eating up not only the bumps, but also the gnarly road surface, where you get see that vibration, some feel of the road. It seems to have got rid of a lot of it, but I still can feel feedback on this bike in the corners, which is normally if you make something super soft and super comfy that you wouldn't notice if you run over a small horse, you tend to lose feel in the corners, but I haven't noticed that so much. I'm going to go through a tunnel. I doubt you'll hear anything but wind. I barely heard anything. This thing is whisper quiet. It goes without saying, you can ride this on an A2 licence, you could ride this on a full licence. The insurance is not going to be too bad, I don't think. Fuel economy is probably pretty good. Okay, it's the moment of truth, motorway time. Can it do 70 comfortably? I don't think it'll take too long to get to 70. Okay, it might take a little while. Okay, I'm doing 70 miles an hour and the RPM light is continuously flashing at me. Reason being, the RPM light can be adjusted for when you want it to flash, and it's currently set at about 8,500 RPM. Because this is a new engine and I didn't want to, you know, completely rag the engine, I was trying to be a little bit nice to it. Most of its power's lower down anyway, so it's okay. But right now I just need to know a couple of things. Okay, theoretically, and I don't know how I would have come to this, I think it does about 82. It might do a bit more when the engine's a bit older and you give it a bit more. And as for cruising speed, at 70, yeah, it's just above where I'd be happy to have the revs if I own this bike, but it can do it. If I was just going to be cruising and I want the bike to be happy, 60 to 65 feels like a more reasonable place for it. It feels far happier at that point, you know. An engine tends to sort of feel okay, and then there's this point where you just go beyond and it goes from sounding like it's just happily humming along to, oh please, just not this much. I am in 6th, doing 60. If I drop a gear, can I get any sort of boost? Kind of. But it's actually different from when you just stay in 6th. Not really. Controls are just lovely. The gearbox is very, very, very smooth. Engine braking's reasonable, it's not huge. But the feel, it's the feel of this goddamn thing, it's great. And yeah, it hasn't got huge amounts of grunt to pick itself back up, but it just sticks and feels planted and predictable and just fun. It's an absolute gem of a bike on a B road. If you were cruising down the motorway on your own, happy to sit at 60, 65, no worries. If you're with a group of other people and they've got larger CC bikes, you know, they want to cruise along 80, 85, yeah, you're not going to have fun, and the bike's not going to like it either. But if you can bring it down a bit, remember it is only a 250. I think the job this would be best at is someone who maybe lives just outside of a city and works in the city, needs to drive in every day. 20, 30 miles on the motorway would be absolutely fine, as long as you don't expect it to do 70, 80 miles an hour. Or if you're just sticking to B roads to, you know, to enjoy the road, the drive a bit more. This would be absolutely fantastic at that. Well, there you go. There's my thoughts on the V-strom 250. I'll be honest, when I came into this, I was a little bit kind of like, but why a 250? And I know why it's only a 250, and I've done videos talking about that, but that's what's available. But in this bike, on those roads, on the B roads, as you've seen, I bloody love this thing. I was not expecting to come out of this like, do you know what? As a daily rider, around the sort of places where I live, unless I'm going long ways, that thing would be awesome. Although you will want your mirror to be more firmly attached. Don't forget, as I say, there was a guy called Bob from the Iron Butt Riders, whatever they're called. I'll put a link in the description about how he rode one of these, 850 miles in 24 hours and 1,400 miles in total over a couple of days, I believe. He'll know far more than me about the long distance stuff, but if you can do that, it's capable. And having ridden it, I'm guessing that he just stuck to 60, 65 and stuck to the B roads and just absolutely loved it. thanks for joining me, and I'll catch you next time. And don't forget, I have a playlist called Bike Reviews, surprisingly enough, where you can see all the motorcycles that I've reviewed. If you feel like supporting this channel, there are many ways to do that, including Patreon and the Spicy 110 Metalworks. I make clocks and things out of motorcycle parts, and I do commissions too. So get in contact. Anyway, bye bye.